Okay.
Okay, and now we're recording. So the people who are joining, not able to join us on the live, you missed my introduction. We can catch you up. You could look up my bio on Mission West Virginia or one of the other webinars where I kind of introduce myself. I won't put you guys that are on here live through that again. Okay, so food insecurities usually stem from children not being fed reliably. I can't talk today. Or get enough food, or kids who have to fend for themselves for food. The resulting anxiety can lead to behaviors like eating really quick, overeating at every opportunity, and even sneaking or hoarding food. In cases of sibling groups, you may even witness an older child eating less to ensure their younger siblings have enough to eat. Food is vital. They don't do this just because it's another thing. Food's vital. From the moment you're born, it's one of the first things that babies know how to communicate to get for themselves. You know, they feel their stomach gets uncomfortable. They know they're hungry. They cry. A caregiver comes in and feeds them a bottle, and then they start to form an attachment with that caregiver. Right? It's too easy to kind of see the correlation there. So babies that don't get fed when they cry, they're going to have issues forming attachments, right? They're going to have trust issues. They're going to start having all these behaviors that stem from that because they're not getting fed. It's the same thing with children as they get older. If their needs aren't getting met consistently, they're going to have a hard time focusing on other things, right? If I'm always trying to think about when my next meal is going to come, am I going to be able to sit in my chair and focus on school? Probably not, right? I don't know why I was waiting for you guys to answer, but no, you're not going to be able to do that. If you're worried about what you're going to have for dinner, are you going to want to socialize with your friends at school? Probably not. If it's consuming all your thoughts, you're not going to be thinking about that or focus on those things. And so that's where, our kids kind of leave the crowd a little bit because they're so focused on other things. They can't focus on the things that the other kids are focusing on, like playing on the playground, doing school projects, all the things that we kind of take for granted. Food possesses the power to make people feel safe and cared for. A lot of us can think back to good memories about, grandmas, aunts, uncles, and going to their house and having our favorite meal there, right? When I think back to my own childhood, I think about my grandma lived next door, and I used to love to go up there and eat dinner with her when she made spaghetti. And she would call and tell me that she was making spaghetti so I wouldn't miss it. And I just felt so loved when, she would call and have me come up there because, my grandma had 8 children. I have a ton of cousins, and at any given time, there'd be 10, 15 people at her house. But for her to take the time and call me just made me feel really special. Food helps us nourish us for proper growth and development. When a child of any age begins to associate conflict or stress around food, like when maybe parents are arguing because they don't have enough money to buy groceries that month or that week, or they say, oh, I can't send you to school with a snack. We just don't have the money. Or I don't know what we're going to have for dinner. We can't buy that. It's too expensive. Sometimes kids start to develop food insecurities. That's what starts it sometimes. Like I said earlier, our very first foster placement was a sibling group of 5. Okay, they had already been in foster care for 2 years. And when they were placed with us, there were 9, 8, 6, 3, and 2. Okay, kind of ponder that for a moment. So they're all pretty young. We were brand new to being parents. We'd never had any kids before. So we went, 0 to 5 kids overnight. So there's a bit of a learning curve there with all of us. On top of that, my brother-in-law had an upcoming deployment. We'd already made plans to go visit him. So literally the kids came to us late one evening and we packed up and left the next morning and drove to Illinois. So that car ride, Illinois, the 9 hours, they were perfect angels. They established what they were going to call us. We had a big, what most people call the honeymoon period, where they're just great, behaved great. But it didn't take us very long to realize that there was more to it than what they're kind of showing us. One of those things we noticed were food insecurities. And kids, when we talk about food insecurities, kids don't have to be in foster care or part of the system or on welfare to have food insecurities. I mentioned my dad earlier. He was one of 8 kids. They always had enough to eat, but it was something he always worried about was having a little bit more, if that makes sense. And our region, the rate of food insecure individuals, that's a mouthful to say, is 14%. The national average is 12.5. So it's a little more prevalent here in West Virginia. Like I said, my dad was one of 8. They always had enough to eat. And he's in his 60s now, but he still exhibits some of the longer lasting symptoms of food insecurities. And it's just little things. Because when he was growing up, he was like a bottomless pit. He could not get full, right? And a lot of kids are like that. You can't feed them enough food to make them full. And he was a bottomless pit for his stomach. So food was always on his mind. When he was 14, he got a job bagging groceries at a grocery store so he could earn money to help buy groceries to bring home to the house so his mom could cook them more at meals. That's how food obsessed he was. And like I said, he's in his 60s now, and he still exhibits some lasting symptoms of food insecurities. Like if he thinks he's found a good deal on food or it's something that he really enjoys eating and maybe he hasn't seen it at a store for a while, instead of buying 1 or 2 packages of it, he'll buy 10. When we go to a new area and he sees a sign for a bakery or some type of restaurant, we're going there because he's going to check it out and kind of scope it out to see what they have. He always has a lunchbox with him that's filled with food and snacks. His favorite thing. He's got my kids doing it. He tells them that if they go somewhere and they get hungry, it's their fault because they didn't pack food. And not in a mean way. He'll immediately start cooking the moment someone comes in his house, or he'll go in there and get one of these snack things he bought, like pickled sausage. Like my kids like pickled sausage and pickled eggs, and he keeps it on hand at the house. We come in, he's handing them pickled sausage or Slim Jims or some kind of snack. In fact, just last week, or 2 weeks ago, when we canceled my webinar, I was in the hospital. My first night in the hospital, my second night in the hospital, my mom came with a bag that my dad had packed for me, and it was full of food because he was worried that I might get hungry sitting in the hospital, and he was worried I didn't have a chance to pack myself a lunch for the hospital because I didn't know I was going to be in the hospital. And we saw kind of a similar behavior in our children, but it wasn't as advanced as my dad. If we cooked a dinner that they'd like, they would overeat to the point that our 2-year-old, the youngest of that group, her belly button would go from an innie to an outie. We called it her little cinnamon roll. She would eat too much, and if we didn't monitor, like pay attention while she was eating, that little cinnamon roll belly button would pop out, and we'd know that she was going to throw up in her sleep that night, and we'd worry about it. We'd sit with her, try to get her to stop eating, obviously, but she couldn't stop herself. They would get up in the middle of the night and take sweets from the pantry, then sneak them in their room and eat them all. Like if we bought a package of cookies and there was a package of cookies in the pantry, instead of sneaking to the pantry and getting 1 or 2, they would sneak and get the whole package and take the package to their room and eat the whole package, or they'd hide it in their room because they would worry that someone else would beat them to it and that we wouldn't buy it again if somebody ate it all. They'd had food in their rooms, their school backpacks, and I even caught my 14-year-old recently carrying around a piece of deer meat in his pocket in case he got hungry later. That's what he said to me. He pulled a piece of deer meat out of his pocket, and I said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I've been carrying this around in case I got hungry later," and he ate it. The oldest sibling of that sibling group of 5 had been the parents to the kids their entire life away from us. He'd constantly ask us what time we were eating each meal, what time we're eating dinner, what time we're eating lunch. Are we going to have breakfast in the morning? What time's that going to be? And if it wasn't, what time was it going to be? It's what are you cooking for dinner? What are you cooking for lunch? What are we going to have for lunch? Do we need to go to the store? I know that we're low on milk. Do we need to go to the store to get milk? Or are we going to have enough milk to make dinner? Are we going to have enough milk for cereal in the morning? If we changed what we planned on eating the last minute, it would wreck his whole day. So we had to stay on schedule with that. Because up to that point, you know, he was the oldest sibling. He was taking care of his younger siblings. He was probably the adult of his household, for lack of a better way to put it. He was the one taking care of everybody. I was finding cake wrappers stuffed in books on bookshelves where the kids were sneaking it. We were finding stuff in vents, under mattresses, under pillows. One time, one of the kids was walking out of the kitchen, and I was sitting doing some paperwork, and I just teasingly turned around and tapped him on the back, and I hit a bag of chips because he was taking it out of the kitchen to sneak up to his room and eat them. They weren't hungry. We had just finished eating dinner an hour before. Once we caught on to what was happening, we had to come up with a plan to try to alleviate a lot of the stress. We realized food was super stressful to our kids. So we had to think of ways to kind of counterbalance it. You know, our oldest son always had food on the mind. That was kind of where we started. How do we alleviate his stress of what we're going to eat and when are we going to eat it? And that was kind of the easiest thing we could think of, because what we did with him and the rest of the kids was we set everybody down. We said, let's sit down, let's talk about this as a family. You know, the 7 of us sat down, we said, let's make up a menu. What are your favorite things to eat? And so the kids told us their favorite meals. And we set up the menu where we'd try to have meals for dinner each night of the week. Now, I know that most of you always probably already know that if given the chance to let young kids pick their meals out, they're going to pick chicken nuggets, microwave pizza, French fries, pizza bites, Hot Pockets, Pop-Tarts, whatever easy, quick thing there is that tastes good to them. And I can't blame them. That stuff tastes great, right? But it's our job to kind of steer them away from that, because we don't want them to be ashamed of liking things like that, because it's great stuff. Because it could go both ways with food insecurities. If you say, you don't want to give them the junk food lecture, if that makes sense. We kind of berate them for eating so many sweets and tell them they're going to be overweight or get diabetes or unhealthy, because you don't want them to develop an unhealthy body image. If your child's having food insecurities, the problem's not really with the food. There's an underlying issue there, right? There's anxiety causing it. There's other things. You have to make them comfortable with what they're doing. You have to focus on healing their trauma and not their weight, be it that they're underweight or overweight. Contrary to what a lot of people think, with kids, food insecurity doesn't mean that a kid's underweight. You know, it might be that they're overweight. Many children and teens live with obesity as a symptom of earlier food insecurities from childhood. When you focus on healing somebody with food anxieties, focusing on their weight is going to just increase the problem, and it creates more issues around food. Instead, focus on healing their mental and emotional trauma. If that makes sense. You want to still model healthy eating habits, but you don't want to focus too much on what they're eating and stuff like that. You want to fix the underlying issue. You know, sitting down for dinner and having your healthy plate each night. Hey, that's where we all want to get, but that's not the real problem. The problem's not that they don't eat their carrots or they eat too much carrots. The problem is they're worried about if they're going to get another meal after this. So my favorite word, and I use this word in every webinar, is consistency, right? You have to start being consistent in what you do when you're feeding the kids. What I was saying earlier, what we found worked with us was sitting down and creating this menu with the kids. What's your favorite meal? Let's go down, make sure everything's getting their favorite thing to eat this week. And then we'd pepper in, oh, you want Hot Pockets? That's not really a dinner thing. Or, microwave chicken nuggets, that's not really a dinner thing, but maybe we can have it for lunch on a Saturday. And then for dinner that night, we'd make sure that we try to pepper in, our fruits and vegetables that we needed to get. And then from making our menu for the week or for the month, depending on, how much space we had in the pantry and fridge that at the time, we'd make a grocery list with the kids based on the menu they'd come up with. We'd make a square. Here's, Saturday the 5th. On the 5th for breakfast, it looks like we're having cereal. For lunch, it looks like we're going to have, some ravioli. And for dinner, chicken casserole with broccoli. And we'd have desserts. We'd do all this stuff. What kind of snacks would you like? We'd make these big, huge grocery lists, but the whole family helped with them. As many kids as we could get to participate in it, the better off we were. Obviously the 2 and 3-year-old aren't going to realize what they're doing, except when you say, hey, what do you want to eat? And they say sketty or something like that. And by George, we'd have sketty. We try to buy a little bit healthier snacks, but we still get like the little Debbie cakes or potato chips. We'd leave open nights where we knew that we were going to have a lot of leftovers, and we'd kind of anticipate the nights where we'd know we'd have a lot of leftovers built up. We'd call those mom's choice nights, and it'd be a leftover night. Or we'd use the mom's choice nights to try to introduce them to new, healthier foods. Because we know if kids are given a choice, they're not going to pick the healthy stuff. Like I said earlier, sometimes you got to be a little tricky with them. Did this make the food insecurities go away? Not immediately. It didn't, because it's a constant thing that you have to be very aware of it as you're working through these issues. Doing the menu out ahead of time, having the kids help us make grocery lists and stuff did alleviate a lot of the anxiety around dinners and in any meal. But the things that really helped us was us sitting down at dinner each night as a family. My wife and I made it a point not to talk about money in front of the kids, just because we don't want to stress them out. We try not to say we can't get that because it costs too much, unless it's something, that's going to be blatantly cost too much. Like, oh, can we get 10 live lobsters? No, that costs too much money. That's kind of a given. You don't want to argue about bills in front of your kids, because that brings back those insecurities immediately. You might go through making menus and having family dinners for months and months and months, and you start to see a little less anxiety about meals. You finally start to see it. You're finding less wrappers under the pillows, in between the mattresses, wherever you're finding them, in the books on the bookshelf like we did. And then it just takes one conversation for the child over here, you have with your spouse about bills or something, and then the food insecurity comes right back. Oh no, mom and dad are arguing about bills. I know what this means. It means the first thing they're gonna start kind of skimping on is the food, and they're gonna start hoarding food, or they're gonna start overeating, or they're gonna stop eating, on the opposite end of that. We've seen that. With our sibling group, we kind of noticed that the oldest child in the sibling group, at first, he did not eat very much food. He didn't. And he was a grown boy, he's a 9-year-old boy. And we're like, man, he really doesn't eat a lot. And he's kind of a little guy. And we kind of figured out that he was trying to make sure that there was enough for everybody, for his brothers and sisters to eat. And you have to sometimes be very perceptive of what's going on with the kids. What helps me is taking notes, especially if you have sibling groups, especially if you have more than one child. I always say keep a diary. What's going on each day? Hey, we had this behavior on this day. This is what was going on. We had a visit. It could be anything going on. Bring the kids to the grocery store with you. I know I said we had them help us make a menu and a grocery list, but we brought them to the store with us to kind of so they could see different foods on the shelf that maybe we don't eat all the time. And they'd start asking, hey, what's this? Well, that's squash. And you'd be surprised what your kids don't know as far as foods, especially when it comes to fruits and vegetables. And they'd say, hey, can we try this? Well, sure. We'd get squash, bring it home, cook it up for it. Turns out it really was a good thing for expanding their palates. We limited the amount of desserts they got. So I did in the beginning, I always say in the beginning, the golden days when we were brand new to it and the kids were younger, try to make dessert about twice a week, maybe 3 times a week. That way they'd have something to look sweet to look forward to after they finished eating. Doing that helped with a couple things. If you didn't eat, your main food off the plate, you didn't really need dessert, because if you're not hungry enough to eat your dinner, you're probably not hungry enough to eat dessert, right? It also helped with teaching the kids how to kind of self-pace while eating. So we had a big problem with a few of the kids overeating, right? Because again, they're worried about, are they going to get their next meal? Is it going to be something they like as much as what they're eating right now? And all that. And so on nights that we had desserts, the kids were like, hey, I really want to eat this dessert. That might have been something they picked out or something new that they wanted to try. And on dessert nights, we kind of noticed it made a dramatic difference in the amount of food they're eating during the meal. They kind of slow down a little bit, save room, and they learned how to kind of regulate themselves, pace themselves, and they weren't overeating as much anymore. So dessert is kind of, there's more than one side to dessert. And it helps kids that have problems pacing, or monitoring how much is going in, with learning how to kind of self-regulate. And it also kind of gives your kids that don't eat so much dinner a reward to look forward to. Do we make our kids clean their plates? No, because that also kind of creates an unhealthy pattern. My wife likes to point that out all the time. If, when we were growing up, and it's kind of taboo now, I know that I was always told to clean my plate. You can't get up from the table till you clean your plate, right? Probably a lot of you watching were told the same things as a kid. And to this day, I still have problems when I eat dinner. I'm full, but there's still food on my plate, so I feel like I have to eat it all, right? And you can kind of see where that would lead into being a problem. Now, I'm not saying you don't have them eat their food. A lot of kids, especially when they're first placed, when they first come into foster care, they don't want to try the things that you want them to try. Fresh vegetables, fresh, different meats, different things, because they've never had it before. Kids are picky, right? So our rule was that then they had to try 3 bites of each thing on their plate. And if they didn't like it after 3 bites, they could have something else. But you have to keep it like that, because you guys are not short order cooks. Okay? Because if you let kids choose their own meal, again, one kid might want pizza, one kid might want cheeseburgers, one kid might want macaroni and cheese, another one chicken nuggets. And if you're letting them dominate each meal with what they want, they're going to have you cook that every night. Instead, with helping them make their own meals, they've planned what they're eating. They're a little bit more apt to eat what they plan to eat, especially if you only have 1 or 2 children helping you make the menu. They made the menu, they're going to eat it. Makes sense, right? But if in our case, where we had multiple siblings, not everybody likes soup, or not everybody likes certain things. So we would have them try it. 3 bites was our rule. And if they didn't like it, they could have a sandwich, or they could have leftovers from the night before, but they were eating dinner. And if they didn't eat dinner, then their plate would be put in the microwave for them to eat, if they got hungry later in the evening. Because we all know kids that don't eat dinner usually get hungry about 5 minutes after all the leftovers are put up, right? So we'd make it a point to put their plate in the microwave, especially if they didn't try anything, to make sure that they didn't want to try it later. And that helped a lot with I don't like that, and I'm not going to taste it and try it. We didn't allow them to go hungry because the plate was still available to them. And if they tried it, they could have something else if they still didn't like it. But a lot of times we found if they tried it and gave us 3 good bites of it, they ended up liking it and they would eat their plate. Sit down meals was probably the most beneficial thing that we did. Obviously, sit down meals with the family is going to help secure that food insecurity because it's something they're going to look forward to. You're going to create a lot of good memories around mealtime by having sit down family dinners. It just takes one loving adult sitting down with a child for a meal to count as a family meal. So don't overthink it. Don't try to make sure everybody's schedule is clear. It just takes one adult. Regularly showing up at meal times and showing that you care and are interested in your kids' day and what they're doing go a long way in the healing process. Because you've got to remember, a lot of kids probably haven't had that before. Just sitting down at the table and asking them about their day. My favorite memories of my kids all come from dinner time when we have family meals at the table. We've made a lot of great family memories, just the kids telling us about their days. The other kids would talk to them, interject, and we had a lot of good family conversations and funny things happen. I know a lot of times in modern day, a lot of kids play sports and they have practice at night, but anytime they didn't have a practice or a game, we would sit down as a family and have a family meal. If somebody did have practice or game, if it was practice, there would always be a parent home with the rest of the kids so we could sit down and eat. If it was game, we would all be at the ball field together and we'd try to eat before or after, if it wasn't too late. I'm telling you, we learned more about our kids at family mealtime than we did any other time in their lives. It was a great thing. It was made them something about family mealtime makes kids a little bit more talkative, especially if it's something you do every night. And we found out more about our kids by sitting down and asking them questions at the dinner table than probably their counselors did at therapy. Their teachers knew about them at school more than what was known about them before they were placed with us. And it helped give us a little bit more insight into the parenting them, as well as those good memories. Family meal times are great. I'm trying to keep track of where I'm at so I don't ramble on because I could go on and on about how great it is to sit down as a family. If you don't do it, it's something that you should really try to incorporate into your lives. Be it, maybe once a week, twice a week, but as much as you can, because it's important to sit down as a family and build those core memories. Another thing I did was I'd cook large amounts of food. I'm guilty of doing it tonight. I still do it to this day, because in my mind, I kind of saw what Dominic was doing. And that was our oldest son with the not eating. So he wouldn't eat because he was kind of worried about his siblings having enough food. So in my head, I was like, I'll just cook more food. So he sees that there's a lot of food and he won't worry about it. So instead of making, 3 pounds of chicken breast for dinner, I'd make 5. And that's a lot of chicken. I don't know if you guys realize it's a lot of food because I wanted them to see that there was plenty. It's one thing to say, oh, there's plenty of food. Everybody's got enough. But if they see it on the table when you're sitting down for, a family dinner, that's a whole nother thing. I wanted to see that there was plenty of food still in the pot. So, to kind of alleviate that fear of not having enough or feeling like they had to eat it all now because there wasn't going to be any later. And that helped with it. Have enough for leftovers helped. Another thing is to offer constant and honest reassurance, I can't talk, in words and in actions. So children healing from food insecurities, they need constant, nonstop reassurance that their next meal is going to come. It comes from you saying it and also showing them, providing food regularly at meal times and snack times. Let them know that there's food available. It's always going to be there. We always had snacks ready for them when they got off the school bus in the afternoon. On the weekends, we would try to have breakfast around the same time. We know everybody was usually up around 9, so that's what time we'd have breakfast. On Saturday mornings, if there wasn't practice or a game or whatever's going on with the kids, or I didn't have it wasn't a drill weekend from when I was in the military, I had to get up about 9 and I'd make pancakes. And I'd let them help me make pancakes, or we'd fry bacon, or we'd make scrambled eggs together, or we'd do something fun. The kids took turns helping me cook a lot of times. They knew on Saturday mornings, we're going to have family breakfast on Saturday morning, and then we're going to have lunch a little while later, 1 or 2, right? And then we're going to have dinner every night, 6:30, dinner every night, even during the week. Maybe Sundays we don't have a family sit down breakfast, but there's cereal. They have their favorite cereal, and Lord knows they love Pop-Tarts. There's Pop-Tarts available. There's cereal available. It's there on Sunday. Sundays, we always go to my parents and eat. They know that we're going to leave our house at 12 o'clock. When we get to my mom and dad's house at 12:05, we're going to sit immediately down, and we do it to this day. And we're going to have our Sunday dinner at Grandma and Grandpa's. And then we go home Sunday night, we eat leftovers. They know because we consistently do it. We've done the same thing 11 years. And that's helped a lot with food insecurity, because remember, like I said, consistency is the best thing you could do with kids in foster care. Be it for food insecurities, discipline, attachment, all those things. It all takes consistent parenting. And when you feed them consistently at the same time, or you stick with the menu that you made, that makes them feel a little bit better about it, doesn't it? If you try doing what I did with the cooking more leftovers, then
Nikki, we had a question.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, it's fine.
Well, one, I've got your daughter here, and she says you make the best spaghetti. But the question we got was, what do you do when you actually find a stash of food in a kid's bedroom? Like, how would you address that without shaming them, but letting them know it's not okay to stash food in their bedroom?
Well, we have a strict no food in the bedroom rule in our house. But the reason being is not because we don't want the kids to eat all the snacks. Like we know if there's something good, everybody's going to want to eat it. We make sure to publicly address that. For example, my house, the coveted dessert is a strawberry pie from Shoney's, and my dad buys those for us every time he goes to Shoney's. So we get a strawberry pie, once every couple of weeks. And that's the thing that everybody wants. And if we were to find a strawberry pie in one of the kids' rooms, and we have, what we tell them is, hey, strawberry pie doesn't go in the room. It's something that needs to be refrigerated. But if you keep it in your room, you're going to attract bugs and animals to your room, and that's going to make your room dirty. Ants, stuff like that. So we understand that you want to eat more strawberry pie, but strawberry pie belongs in the fridge. If you're worried about a brother or sister eating your piece of strawberry pie, we can cut you a piece of strawberry pie and put it in a baggie or a container, and we'll write your name on it. And we all know that we don't eat stuff with other people's names on it. Other things that are dry foods like chips, potato chips, stuff that's not necessarily going to go lay around in a container that's not sealed. We've allowed little things like that with kids who are old enough to understand that the container has to be sealed. We allow little small food stashes in our teenagers' rooms. And that kind of helps them feel a little better about it, if that makes sense. But the second we go in their room and see like a brownie laying on the bed, just loose brownie, then that kid loses their food privileges in their room for a while. But we do avoid a lot of eating in bedrooms by having the family meals. The family meals are a big deal. With snacks and stuff, it gets kind of harder. We have a daughter that plays high school soccer. She carries snacks in her backpack. She has a small stash of snacks in her room, like Pringles, trying to think what all she has, different things in resealable containers that she's not going to leave out for insects and bugs to smell. Huh? And she shares it with my youngest daughter who likes my spaghetti. So
Hey, Nikki, what about lunches at school? How have you handled, like, your kids eat school lunch? Do they pack? Like what works best for them?
okay. For school lunches, we look at the menu. Our kids, they all bring home the menu each month. And if it doesn't get lost, usually between, one or two of them, we get a menu that makes it to the fridge, and we kind of look ahead to see what they're having. I've been blessed that my kids aren't picky eaters. I don't have a lot of picky eaters in my house. There's one or two. But with those kids, what we do is if we look at the lunch menu and we know they're having something for lunch at school the next day that they're not going to eat, we will pack them a lunch, but they have to choose like a main dish, if that makes sense, like a sandwich, like a main course lunch meal. They can have a vegetable or a fruit like applesauce or carrot sticks, something like that, and then a bag of chips and a drink. And they pick it. And then they can have a little dessert, like a snack cake, or if we have something sweet at the house they want, if we'd made a cobbler or something that we could seal up, for a school lunch that doesn't need to be heated, and they can take that to school. And that's worked really well. Like I said, I don't have a lot of picky eaters, but that's what we've done to kind of take away the anxiety of, oh man, they're having that at school tomorrow, I'm not going to eat anything. Well, yeah, you can pack a lunch. But we have set things that they can pack for lunch. Sometimes, my older kids have taken leftovers to school and eaten them cold because they're like, this tastes good cold. Can I take it for lunch tomorrow? Sure, go ahead. But food's something we're constantly talking about in our house. That way they don't have to worry about it, or they kind of feel a little bit better about it, if that makes sense. Was there any more questions that needed answered right now, Rachel, or?
Nope, that's it for now.
Okay. Hopefully I covered them. If I didn't, let Rachel know, and we'll circle back around. Again, just to kind of get myself back on track to where I was, if you have to a lot of times offer that verbal reassurance too, as well as showing them. Some kids don't pick up on having examples like that every day. You sometimes you have to point it out. The best story I like to tell to people who think that their kids know more than they do is a story about that sibling group of 5. Those 5 kids couldn't look more alike. They all have very similar features on their body. But when they were first placed in the foster care, there were only 4 of them. The youngest wasn't born yet, the youngest of that 5, because they're a group of 6 now. But the youngest of 5 wasn't born yet. And she was born shortly after they were placed in foster care, but their foster mother was also pregnant. And she had a baby around the same time their sister was born. And the baby and their sister came home from the hospital around the same time. And then when they moved to the second foster home, obviously their sister went with them, but their previous foster mother's baby didn't. And then when they moved in with us, obviously, again, their sister came with them. And we kind of noticed that they would take the 3-year-old side as opposed to the 2-year-old side on things. Like we would see the 3-year-old, do something wrong, and all the kids would blame it on the 2-year-old. And so finally we set the 3 older kids down and said, hey, why are you always blaming, the 2-year-old for this when it's obviously the 3-year-old? Why are you doing that? And they said, well, the 3-year-old's our brother. And the 2-year-old, her name's Kristen. She's not 2 anymore. And Kristen, she's our sister, but she's not really our sister. And I said, what do you mean, not really your sister? And they said, well, basically she's been with us, but she's not our real sister. Nobody had to explain to these kids that their pregnant mother, who they knew was pregnant when they were taken, had her baby, and that baby was Kristen. They didn't know until they moved in with us, and Kristen was over 2 years old. And that's something that everybody just kind of assumed that they knew. They knew their mom was pregnant. They knew their mom had a baby, but nobody had told them that that baby was actually their sister that their mom was pregnant with when they were taken. So that's why I really need to stress that you sometimes need to verbally tell the kids, hey, you don't have to worry about food. Have you ever seen us low on food in the pantry? Have we ever not made you dinner? Have we ever not had something to eat for lunch or breakfast? Has there not ever been a snack for you when you came home from work? Some kids you have to point it out to, some kids not so much. But you always want to do it in both ways with that consistency and having it, and sometimes just by verbally telling them, hey, do you like what we cook for meals around here? You know, you might not take my approach of letting the kids create a menu, and that's fine. It's whatever works in your house. But making that menu has really helped with us because, again, a kid's more likely to eat a food that they choose, you know, for dinner. And you can remind them of that ever so gently. You know, hey, I noticed you're not eating your casserole tonight. You kind of picked this out for dinner. Why aren't you eating it? I thought you liked this. And they're like, you're right. You know, sometimes that you're right doesn't come out of kids' mouth very often, but and they'll kind of realize, hey, yeah, I did pick this out. I should probably eat it. And it makes them feel more included, more a part of the family too, by having them help you make meals. Like I said, my kids loved helping me cook meals. We had to almost knock down, drag out fights each night of who was going to help me make dinner. And we had to break it down to different parts, have different kids help with different parts of the meal prep. You know, I've had kids that can plate foods great. I eventually, now that the kids are older, you know, 22, 19, 18, 17, my goal all along was to make it so each kid could make at least one meal on their own without me. And we've done a pretty good job of doing that. Even tonight, before I left, I started dinner, but I didn't finish it. And my 19-year-old came down to finish cooking dinner, and I didn't really have to even explain to him how to finish making it because it's something that we've made together several times. And so I know that the kids are fed dinner, you know, because 6 o'clock's coming around, and I'm on here with you guys. But 6 o'clock, dinner's being served at my house. And my 19-year-old finished cooking dinner, so it would be on the table for him. Another thing you can do, I said before, we had snacks ready for them the second they came in the door from school. We always have snacks available any given time. The kids love seeing our full snack closet. They'd come, open the door to the pantry, fling it open, and just look, and they shut it back. They didn't always grab stuff, especially the older kids. It'd be time for bed and they'd go down, they'd look in the pantry, look at everything and shut the door. They wouldn't take anything. I don't know if they were sizing up what they were going to take that night or what they wanted to take for snack to school the next day, but they'd always come down and check to make sure the food was there. And so we made it a point to always make sure that, you know, our shelves were stocked in there so they could see. And that really helped them get through their insecurities about that, and it kind of decreased their anxiety. There's just something healing about seeing that food there. Shoot, they'd have friends come over and stay the night, and their friends would come and look in the pantry. They wouldn't take anything, they just look. And it's a long road to go down with food insecurities. It's not an easy road. It's not something that can be fixed overnight or in a month. It's something that takes a long time. It's a hard thing. It's a harder thing to teach some kids than it is other kids, you know. We had, you know, several of the kids, the younger kids, got over their food insecurities pretty quick. With the older ones, I'm still finding food wrappers and books sometimes. I'm still finding things tucked away in bedrooms, but they're getting a little better about hiding it, right? But it's important for us to help guide their self-regulation and hunger cues. It's taught. Healthy eating habits are taught over time by us modeling, you know, what a healthy relationship with food and eating looks like. Use every opportunity you can to kind of model healthy eating behaviors through your actions. Provide the connection and trust your child needs mentally and emotionally so they're more able to hear their body's true hunger cues instead of turn to food for soothing and comfort. You know, a lot of people, a lot of adults, if they're sad or upset, what we do, I go make a bowl of ice cream, right? But that's not the right thing to teach our kids. And we got to be very aware of the things that we do, our own behaviors. One thing we do to help our kids kind of listen to their own bodies and their own hunger cues as to whether they're full or still hungry or not is we don't allow cell phones at the table. Electronics, period. Our younger kids all have tablets. They love watching TikTok and YouTube and all this. Kids play with toys. Other kids play with toys. I don't know. I'm sure some of you probably laughed when I said that. So we don't allow it. You're not watching a video while we're sitting having a family dinner. You're not sitting up watching a video while you're eating lunch by yourself at a table. If it's a weekend and we're not eating lunch together, we still don't let them have a tablet or a phone at the table while they're eating, because they need to kind of learn to listen to their bodies. It's hard to learn to listen to your body. And doing that kind of help them realize, hey, I'm full, I'm done. It's just a big step, and it's a hard one. Kids, if you try to take away their cell phone, oh my gosh, the world is over. But it's honestly, it's just 30 minutes. It's 30 minutes because I want to see you and I want to talk to you, or I want you to just have time away from it for a second. It helps them learn alternate coping strategies. It helps them heal and get through their food insecurities. A lot of them have gone through trauma, right? Individual trauma. And like I said, at the dinner table, a lot of that trauma has kind of spilled from our kids' mouth. And again, I've learned things about my kids, 4 years later. They'd been adopted 3 years, and I found out things that happened, with their biological parents that we had no clue happened, that DHHR had no clue happened. And it's all came out at the dinner table. And we learn different things about the kids. We can go back and address those traumas. Well, I didn't know that happened to you. I'm really sorry. We're going to talk to your counselor about that and see if we can get you some help.
Hey, Nikki, have you ever dealt with issues that involved like a particular food, like maybe not just like worries about food scarcity, but a child that has an aversion or particular fascination with a particular food, maybe tied to trauma?
I'm trying to think. We have with fried chicken. The kids, my big sibling group, their grandmother made them fried chicken all the time, and apparently there was an incident that involved a lighter, and again, something we never knew. And my daughter helped me make fried chicken one night. And as it was frying in the pan, the grease kind of spattered on her hand and burned her. It didn't burn her bad, and she kind of jumped back and started screaming like it burned her real bad, which scared me, obviously. And I grabbed her hand and stuck it under the water, and she started screaming, "He's burning me! He's burning me!" And I said, "It shouldn't be burning you anymore. I don't even see a spot on your hand. Tell me where it's burning. I'm trying to get the water on it." And she said, "No, no, no, with the lighter." And I said, "Who's got a lighter?" Because I had no idea. I don't have a lighter. It wasn't a lighter that burnt you. It was grease that spattered out of the pan on your hand. And she said, "No, with a lighter." And she showed me, and she had a scar on her finger that looked like somebody had held a hot lighter to her finger. And that was kind of how we found out about some of the abuse she went through. We kind of noticed once that was kind of brought to light that anytime we had fried chicken, the kids would talk about their grandmother. And at first it was, "Oh man, I miss grandma's fried chicken. She made the best fried chicken." And then it kind of got to, grandma beat me till I bled one time for something the girls did, and I didn't even do it. And they always started talking about negative things on chicken nights, fried chicken nights, if that makes sense. And so once we kind of realized that the negative kind of feelings around fried chicken, and I know it might seem kind of silly to some of you guys, then we kind of changed when we'd have fried chicken. Because obviously you don't want to have it very often because it's not the greatest food for you, but we tried to kind of create new memories with it. Like I'd stop cooking it at the house for one. After the PTSD incident with my daughter and the lighter, I was like, I'm not going to cook this anymore here with her, because I hate that she had to go back to that place. Until she works through it in therapy, we're not going to try to push her through it at the house. And so we'd go get like Kentucky Fried Chicken, and we'd go have a picnic at the park. And we kind of steer the conversation away from what happened, when they were with grandma, into something new. Man, this chicken's good. What do you guys want to do? Go play in the creek after this? You want me to try to go down the slide with you? What do you want to do? And we try to change the feelings around that food, if that makes sense. I'm glad you brought that up. And there is obsessions with different foods. For a long time, it was with spaghetti. That's why I keep bringing up spaghetti, or chicken nuggets. Chicken nuggets was a big one. My kids would have chicken nuggets for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I don't know if it's a little kid thing, or if it's a my kid thing, or if it's a kid in foster care thing, because I hear a lot about chicken nuggets. But we have to explain, you're going to turn it into a chicken nugget. You have that thing. You can't eat the same thing for every meal. So if you like chicken nuggets, that's a good lunch thing, but not a great dinner thing. If you like chicken nuggets so much, you're going to love grilled chickens, because it's the same thing. Chicken's chicken. It tastes a little different, but I promise you'll like it just as much if we try it this way. If you don't like it, what kind of seasonings do you like on it? What's going to make you like this? Let's figure it out. It's a daily fight. It's a daily fight. The food in the bedrooms, it's a daily fight sometimes. Why is there an open bag on your nightstand? Open bag of chips on your nightstand? That's gross. You're going to get ants. Keep food in the common areas, because that's where we have it, and that's where we know we can see it. We can have eyes on it. We can make sure food's getting cleaned up. That's how we keep, all this stuff out of the house. It's a daily battle. Like I said, it's not going to get better overnight. Obsessions with certain foods not going to get better overnight. Aversion to certain foods not going to get better every night. Sometimes you have to get creative. I'm not telling you to lie. I'm just telling you what's worked for us. Our kids, before we got the kids, we loved going and eating Chinese food once a week. We'd go out and eat Chinese food. When the kids moved in with us, we're like, hey guys, you like Chinese food? They're like, absolutely not. Chinese food is the most disgusting thing on the planet. Broke our hearts, right? Because we love Chinese food. And so we took them to the China buffet. But when we went to the China buffet, they said, what kind of food is this? We're like, oh, this restaurant's called the China Buffet. We just kind of said it different. And, they could read. They were 9, 8, and 6. But because we said it like that, they gave it a shot. And guess who ended up loving Chinese food? Every single one of my kids. Sometimes you just have to kind of open their eyes to it. Incorporate fun memories. If it's food they're avoiding, you notice they're talking about certain things when they're eating it, then help them address it. Make fun memories about it. You do like we did. It might not be fried chicken. That's an easy one to take on a picnic. I don't know if it'd be quite so easy to do it with other foods, but you have to get creative with it. We put on a lot of different hats when you step into a foster parent role. One of those hats is creative thinker, and you all know that. And some things you can't do on your own. You're going to have to put them in counseling. And there's no shame in it. I know there used to be a lot of stigma around putting kids in counseling, but I don't know how you could do it without counseling, honestly. And not just for them. Sometimes you're going to need stuff because you're going to experience that secondhand trauma from things they're telling you at the dinner table. Helping your kids address their individual traumas in a healthy way is going to be the key to healing food insecurities or food survival behaviors. Try to put some fun in the day. If they're not in a sport, put them in a sport. Let them try it. Our kids tried every sport. Most of them were terrible at all of them. Put them in art, music. Keep their minds focused on some way they can express, themselves. Teach them breathing exercises. Teach them meditations. Teach them different exercises they can do. With our kids, when they felt anxious or we could tell they were feeling anxious, we'd have them go outside and jump on a trampoline. we started letting them go on little runs, and it turns out that several of our kids have a real knack for running, and they never would have known that if we wouldn't have sent them outside to kind of get that out, work it out. If you notice, there are a lot of behaviors around dinner time each night. Try to talk it out with the kids. If they're young, maybe have dinner a little earlier, because some of it might not be because it's dinner time. It might be because they're tired. It might be because they had a visit the day before. It might be because they have a visit coming up. It might be because they had a rough day at school. It could be any number of things, but it's coming out at dinner because that's when you're together. So you kind of have to play detective. And like I said earlier, keep that journal. Had a lot of anxiety around dinner. Said they were picked on at school that day. And you kind of go back and look at your notes and do that detective work to figure out what it is. It's broccoli and chicken night. Might be because of the broccoli. If you go back and see that it's always when you have broccoli, okay, then let's address this. Let's do something different. Let's put some cheese on that broccoli. Let's not do broccoli. Let's just have a salad without broccoli, and then we'll slowly kind of put it back in there, because you never know. It could be something. Maybe they got yelled at all the time to eat their broccoli. You just got to play detective. That's all there is. Like I said, get them in counseling. If you notice there's a real problem around mealtime, get them in counseling. Get counseling for yourself. You guys need to seek out support groups for yourselves. Talking to other parents that are going through the same things or similar things is the number one best thing you could do for yourself too. And we have a Facebook group. It's West Virginia RAP, RAPP, Relatives as Parents group. Get on there. If you don't have an in-person physical support group in your area, hop on that Facebook group, hop on any Facebook group, find your people, and they're going to help you out. And of course, you guys have me as a resource. You can message me anytime. I have a Facebook, look me up, Nikki Snuffer. You can email me. I'm on Miss West Virginia's website. Get a hold of me.
I put Nikki's email in the chat. And does anybody have any questions before we let Nikki go? I've learned a lot about Nikki talking to her daughter for the last hour.
Oh.
I hear you're a good cook. It's all good.
Oh, good.
Here's a question. Okay. Yes, everyone who has signed in, we will send you a participation certificate tomorrow. No worries. Just give us till the end of the day tomorrow, because I'll have to have someone make that certificate, and check your junk mail, because a lot of times they go there for some reason. Any other questions for Nikki? And we will get this up on our website shortly. We'll have to get it off of the recording out of the cloud and get it up on our website. There's a webinar section, so that'll be there for anyone who wasn't able to attend. Any other questions? All right, well, I think you're off the hook, Nikki. Thank you so much. And there's Nikki's email. If anybody has follow-up questions, you're welcome to email her. I'll put mine here too, and we'll get those certificates out tomorrow. There we go. All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night, guys.
Keeping the camera now?